to the spotlight, live from Washington, D.C. Um, Today, we would be, there's a lot of breaking news, and I have very well situated and savvy analysts in the studio and joining us remotely to dissect the political happenings, particularly in a day so eventful like today in Cameroon. But our topic for today is the impact or the implication of Biya'S candidacy to the war in the southern Cameroons. So with me in the studio is our permanent representative, Mr. Kenneth Day, Seseku Ebini, who has been with us for some time now. And then joining us remotely is Kingsley Newu. He's a political analyst and political and economy expert. And Dr. Ayub also joining us from the UK. He is a leadership and development expert. Gentlemen, and to our audience worldwide, once again, welcome to today's event. I think we would all agree that the release of the electoral list today in Yaoundé by Elekam has sent shockwaves with the rejection of Maurice Kamto and I think about 60 something other candidates who had filed in their intention to replace the Lion Man in a 2D. Let me get your first take on your impression on what has transpired today in Yaoundé. Sisi Bini, I would want to start with you.
Well, and just looking at the whole electoral process, it's a mockery. I feel really sorry for the people whom by their right are aspiring to want to serve the nation at this high position. But if you would see what is going on, things have even gotten worse than they were like in the 1992 downward, because nothing has changed by way of law. It has become more of intimidation for anybody who aspires to be a candidate. And I don't know really how anyone can think that in such a system where the CPDM is governing and making the laws and controlling the elections and determining when the elections will take place, determining when, how it would be published and who would declare who won. I don't know how any candidate can be able to make it through. It doesn't matter whether they accept your candidacy or not. I just feel for these candidates. I feel for the country. And I feel for this joke that they call elections.
But Kenneth, what's your take?
Well, here we are in Cameroon, and we are moving resolutely towards a civil strife or perhaps a full-blown civil war. I do not think that Maurice Kamto or his supporters are going to relent their efforts. And when you have, I think the director of Elecam or director general is Eno Abrams Egbe, and the president du conseil, the chairman of the board of directors, is his name Eric Iswe, something like that? These are people who are leading Cameroon towards the path of a civil war, and they will be individually held accountable for their actions, individually. Maurice Kamto's supporters, I do not see why they've rejected their Maurice Kamto's candidacy. As a matter of fact, within the last 30 minutes, we have had the reason, Elekam has given an official reason, saying that Manidem produced two candidates. CPDM also submitted two candidates. Why was CPDM not completely eliminated from these elections with the reasons that Elekam is proffering? So it is now left to the supporters of MRC or Manidem to have Elekam serve the people and not have Elekam be subservient to the regime in place.
Ken, I think, let me hold you again back to that. The idea about what would the MROC or the CROM do now. CROM did not file in for any presidential candidate, did they?
Well, just as in 92 or subsequent years after 92, CPDM has had coalitions, whether it's with Bello Buba's UNDP or Dakole Daisara's MDR and so on and so forth. So the candidates of these different political parties have generally speaking, been Paul Biya. And there's been no, problem.
No, but I think this is different because the party leaders of those organizations or all the parties that you just highlighted did not resign from their party. Kamto officially resigned from MROC and became a member of Manidem. So I'm trying to see the link why you are linking that the.
Did he resign?
Yes, he did. Kamto officially resigned June the 25th as the leader of MROC. So it's not a coalition between MROC and Manidem. But not to belabor that point, what I really wanted to see how significant it is that they decided, for the reason that they have given. I've heard from some quarters that the other CPDM candidate could not cough up the 30 million that was required, so it was rejected. But that does not also address that there were two candidates from the CPDM who has standing to present a candidate on behalf of the party. Is it that anybody within that party can just decide to run, or there is a structure that is supposed to present a candidate on behalf of that political organization? Kingsley, let me get your thoughts on this. How significant is the rejection of Maurice Kamtos' candidacy?
Thank you for having me. And
I think you're
I've
muted.
just
Oh,
listened to,
I
yes,
think you're
to a number
muted.
of things, and I would just want to see if I can systematically just address some of them. The first thing is the fact that the first speaker talked about feeling sorry for the candidates, and it been sad for Cameroon as a whole. A sentiment I share. However, I think the biggest challenge that we face is that Cameroonians and the political system is reactionary to the CPDM. So they wait for the CPDM to jump, and then they now see whether they can jump higher. The CPDM is one of the most porous, weak systems that you can find in any country. However, we don't have anyone tactically looking at them and thinking, where are their weak points so that we can be able to target those weak points and get them. I will give a simple example of Maurice Kamto. Maurice Kamto created a mass movement in 2018. He claims he won. He came second according to official results. There were crowds gathering whenever this man was coming. He had a four-step plan he said he was going to use to claim his victory. He ended at step two. 2020, he made a fundamental mistake that the SDF made in the 1990s. He boycotted the election, basically ceding ground to the same people he was fighting. Whatever is happening today is the direct consequence of Campbell's actions in 2020. And the question I have not stopped asking myself is, how does a professor of law fall prey to a law that he is alleged to have been part of a party to writing? He should not be in the situation where he has to go to money them to be able to ask for his candidacy. He should not be in a situation where he has to rely on the same dysfunctional system to confirm his candidacy.
Uh,
So
uh,
I see a situation where he was not forward looking. He did not anticipate things. He did not even think far ahead. And then come down to today, what it means is very sad day, because obviously I would have wanted him to be. However, just to clarify that you don't have to pay the 30 million before your candidacy is confirmed. When your candidacy is confirmed, then you can pay the 30 million, meaning that Leon Tiele Onana has been rejected. It cannot be the reason, because you have to pay after your candidacy has been confirmed. It's not in advance. So that's just to clarify that. And then secondly, Kamto's resignation from the MRC is because there is a law saying that he had to do that before he could be eligible to stand as a candidate. So he had actually fulfilled that legal condition. So it is a serious situation that we are seeing unfolding. We are not sure how it will evolve, but the next few days in the Constitutional Council are very pregnant.
Patrick, could it just be a false flag for the CPDM to distract? Because I think it's obvious to anyone that the election is already it's far gone. The conclusion is already far gone. It is obvious the results that would be expecting in October. So could this just be the CPDM throwing something on the side instead of people talking about the corrupt and entrenched nature of the system? Now we are all sucked into arguing whether Maurice Kamto is eligible or not.
It's part of the regime strategy. Let me say hello to everyone in the panel and greetings to our viewers all over the world. I think it is part of the regime strategy. It is the way they operate, and the regime is always fixated with the way it does things. So I don't think it is a false flag. It is actually their modus operandi. They are used to doing one and the same thing. If you look at the way it is happening, it is actually a regime that is geared to using a military-centric approach that they have been doing. That is why by the time they announce the list, Yawende has been militarized. We see a lot of police and the security forces all over the place. That is what they are used to. So as I can relate to the previous speaker, Kamto made a grievous mistake. And it is actually, you cannot reconcile that with his status or his position as a law professor to make those kind of professional errors. And, this is where his experience and his knowledge in the field and
Don't,
other things need to come in for him to move forward. So again, it is not a false flag. It is intentional. The regime is full of using political, military aspect in in what we can say elections. Remember, when in our previous discussion, we said Elekam is the regime, CPDM. So you cannot separate these two. It is owned, it is operated, it is funded, and it's structured to suit the regime. So they are doing exactly what they wanted to do. They don't care about the aftermath.
well, Patrick and Brado, if I may add, which you had asked earlier anyway, we keep saying Maurice Kamto made a mistake, okay? But when you look at it from the perspective that, yeah, I mean, if politically speaking, as an astute politician, he should have gone in for those elections. But he chose not to. Why? Because the legislative elections were still coming up. And he had planned to go in 2 years' time. He had planned to go in for the legislative elections, which Paul Biya decided to postpone to extend the mandates of the legislature. So there you go, then there wasn't any elections. So to fulfill that legal criteria, he did what he had to do. He resigned as chairman of MRC in the time span after a month or within a little over a month and submitted his candidacy via another party. What is fundamentally wrong in that? There's nothing wrong in that.
Kingsley, let me come back to you before I get back to Seseko Bini. Uh, it is hard to argue that Maurice Kamto just basically decided to not participate or take part in the elections in 2018. What was fundamentally wrong or his reason for not doing so? I think the argument was the system is corrupt, and without any changes it's practically difficult for anybody to succeed. And I hold him that now getting back into the system 7 years later with nothing that has been done, the same electoral is there, the constitutional council is still there, even the civil society has been stifled. So the conditions are even getting worse within these past 7 years. So for him even running this time around was a little bit questionable to me. For me, looking at him not running in 2018, given that reason. So what do you really think that even if he was part of this 13-man electoral list that was released today, what would have really changed? Would you think that any among them could still prevail in this system that is entrenched for the past 43 years?
Yeah, just to clarify that, he actually boycotted the 2020 municipal and legislative election. Yeah, he went for the 2018 presidential elections, and then he boycotted the legislative and the municipal elections in 2020. And that's why I said that they are reactionary, because one, you have to look at what the person has been doing. Yeah, it's very predictable. The system is very predictable. The elections that were to be held in 2011 were postponed for 2 years and held in 2013. So the ones that were to be held in 2018 were postponed and held in 2020. So for Camto to have expected one of 2025 to hold on time means that he miscalculated. The CPDM was likely going to postpone this one, especially now that he boycotted 2020 and put himself in a situation of vulnerability. But back to your question of whether it could have changed something, I think it would have. And unlike others who feel that there is no ground going into an election when you think the results are predetermined, I am one of those who actually think elections in Cameroon with a good opposition would beat the CPDM easier than in any other country. One, election is a game of numbers. The CPDM reached so easily because last elections only 3 million people, less than 3 million people voted there. Despite the rigging, 3 million. That means about 3 million others did not even vote. Now we have 8 point something million people who have registered. Majority are likely not to vote. So the margin of them trying to manipulate the vote from the north and some of the hinterland and the northwest and southwest of Cameroon since the conflict started is much easier because of voter apathy. However, if the 8 million people were to go in for election and their gate is less than 3 million, which he would only get, because there is in reality not any sane Cameroonian who is going to vote there.
Kingsley, I think
Yeah.
before let me hold him back to that thought. I think it's a little bit naive to think that the system is set up based on numbers. If they could fraud the elections with 3 million voters, they can do that with 100 million. It's a system, except we are denying that the entrenched system that has been put in place weighs lesser than the numbers of the people. So for me, dealing with numbers, it doesn't matter how many people are going to register in that system. So long as the system is corrupt and set up to favor the incumbent, even if the entire 30 million people register in that country, they are still going to find a way to game the system. And if you said that it is easy to predict the CPDM, then you would agree with the argument that it is predictable that they are going to win the election, irrespective of what is going to happen, because that has happened consistently. So I'll give you 1 minute before I go over to Sisi Bini.
Okay, yeah, thank you so much. And that is why I said, well, because I don't like to criticize when I say they are reactionary. That's why we have been proactive. And the one thing that is going to be different this year is that it's not Elecam that will tell us who won. I'm sure Michelle Doppler has been here, so she might have talked about it. We have an app in development that does not rely on the internet, and we are recruiting volunteers across Cameroon who will be at all the polling stations, and they will upload their results as they happen onto that app. It's text-based, so they shut the internet or the light. We will get the results and we'll have an exit poll. So that is something that's going to be different this year, not controlled by Elecam, not controlled by CBDM.
Okay, Sisi Bini, let me come back to you. I hear what Kingsley is saying, but right here across to Venezuela, the same strategy that Kingsley is now trying to explain, that Michelle Ndoki had that conversation with us here a couple of months ago. The opposition came in with 57% in Venezuela. Guess who is still sitting in Caracas? Maduro, who lost the election. So it doesn't really, as far as the system is protected by the military and the electoral commission, the constitutional council, it doesn't matter what you do as the civil society, because it's clear here what happened in Venezuela, that practically that may be what will happen.
Here is the thing, in the case of Cameroon, we the intellectuals, I would assume we are intellectuals, right? We have our own power. We the intellectuals have been wrong in our analysis since the inception of this CNU CPDM stuff. And have we not been here before? It happened with SDF in 1992. There are people today who are still blaming Frundi that if he went just for that legislative election, things would have been different in Cameroon. That's not true. When we make those analyses, we should also make the assumption that everything is not equal in that setting. That's why I say I'm very sorry. I feel very sorry for these people who have every right to aspire to the highest office in the country, and yet they are falling into a trap where they are wasting their resources and they are wasting their time and energy and aspirations just to accompany this system that we've had forever. It should tell us now that there can never be any way we can beat Cameroon system, I mean the CPDM, by the ballot box if we do not all rally behind one candidate facing them. If we cannot do that, let's not waste our time. They are going for the election. It's not us that we will listen to, but we already know the outcome. There's a wild dog there moving around and talking to children like to candidates as if he's talking to his children at Tangi. And they are ready to do anything. They're ready to use the military, everything. Even if Biya is on life support, he's still gonna win the election. So blaming Kamto for not going for the election, we've already been here before. When SDF went for the election finally, and they were still a powerful party, there was nothing they could do in the assembly. Frundi was reduced to a man who moved around with all the powers that he had until his death. So this Cameroon system if we could get to the place where the young fellows in Senegal, what they did, then we can say that we'll get somewhere. It's a revolution that we need. We need a mass movement. As we are talking amongst ourselves, besides the things that Kamto had done, none of these candidates is moving the ground, is shaking the ground. None of them. Kenneth, your candidate was here not long ago. You had I watched some of the video. Not up to 30 people were in the hall. That is not impressive for people who are going against a corrupt system. All of us should be together. That's why we as Ambazonians, we are even coming here to try to encourage people not to disrupt the elections so that they don't tomorrow, because tomorrow people will turn, like they are blaming Kamto today. Tomorrow they might say that they did not win because Ambazonians did not stand for the elections. But we are here supporting the elections. We are using the elections to get them to release our political prisoners and our leaders that they are locking up. I have no interest whatsoever. I feel, like I said, I feel for these candidates and the money they are spending and their energy. There's nothing they're going to get out of this except we pick up arms and fight.
Kenneth, and this would be to you and Dr. Ayuk. Like I pointed out earlier, the things that happen in Venezuela, it is looking like a mirror image of what is going to happen in Cameroon. The civil society was heavily involved, like what Kingsley is saying, what Michel Ndoki and a group of others have been trying to do, that there should be some.
Let me just say something. I want just to say, no, please.
Okay.
As before we leave here, Kingsley has spoken about the app. If it is something that is a nice project, let all of us get on it. Let him educate us or not. I didn't want to forget that. Okay.
I'll follow up. So you've seen that there is a civic engagement, but to dovetail back to what Seseku said, a lot of us have demonstrated a lot of apathy, particularly the intellectual class, into really gathering that force to uproot the system. So we might still have a situation where the people on the ground do their part. They could upload those results in real time, and we see that even though there is some issues going on with the number of candidates, some candidate emerges as the potential winner. But who is going to read these results? Because the Constitutional Council is going to take, what, is that 2 weeks after the declaration of the result to do the official announcement, which is basically what happened in Venezuela. And you had the opposition go out to the streets, but the crackdown was ferocious. And at the end of the day, the US said, we recognize the opposition. The South American organization said the OAU, not OAU.
The South American equivalent.
Yes, some forgotten the acronym. They came out forcefully in support of the opposition. But this is the second year today, Maduro is still the president.
He's still there.
Because of the system that is backed by the military, the Constitutional Council, even their Supreme Court, which is something like a mirror image of what is happening in Cameroon.
Well, there are 13 candidates right now. And of course, MRC or Manidem will resubmit to an appeal for their candidate, Maurice Kamtos, to be on the ballot box. Okay. Well, let's just say they don't succeed, which is most likely to happen. Brado and all of us here, Maurice Kamtos with his, let's call it a movement, perhaps a mass movement. He has some, significant grassroots support in various townships within Cameroon. Is Maurice Kamtos going to support another candidate, as we saw in the case of Senegal? You see, all of these governments use various laws to eliminate the popular person. And as we saw in Senegal, the guy, because he went to jail, he cannot stand for us as a candidate. So all he did was simply pass on the baton to his friend. So the question is, will Maurice Kamtos support any other person? Is that going to happen?
Well, it's going to.
And this is where, if I may, this is where I think that the opposition in Cameroon for the past almost at least 33 years has been making several mistakes. Why? Because If Maurice Kamto, Bello Buba is 80 something years old. Yeah. Chiroma, Issa
Chiroma.
Chiroma Bakari. We need that vote from the northern bloc. If these guys could simply understand that, and they've been saying it, a northerner has ruled Cameroon, a southerner has ruled Cameroon, why don't they support an Anglophone candidate? Why does Maurice, okay, in 2018, Akere Muna supported Maurice Kamto. He threw in the towel, he went with Maurice Kamto. Shall Maurice Kamto do the same this time around? Well, we look forward to that.
Oh, thank you. Dr. Ayok, is it about the
Right.
candidates or is it about the system? Because in 2018, Akere backed Maurice Kamto and we know the results. They did not go anywhere. So do you think that if this time around Maurice Kamto decides to back any of the candidates, I am really, irrespective of our disagreements with La République, I don't even see why the Northerners think that it is their best right that the presidency has to leave the South now and go back to them. I mean, what exactly are the other regions supposed to do? Just sit because they have the numbers? Do you mean that every time that there's going to be an election in Cameroon and there's a Northerner on the ticket, automatically they become the leader of that ticket if the opposition decides to become one? Dr. Ayok?
Um, Thank you, Brado. I think we are all missing the crucial thing here. We cannot talk about elections in Cameroon. The system cannot be trusted. There is serious exclusion in Cameroon governance. Serious exclusion. We've learned from the Anglophone crisis and the Southern Cameroon's war of independence. This position that Cameroonians are facing now is the same situation that we were in before 2016, and we decided that enough is enough. We need to go on to land reclamation. What I mean by land reclamation is that you cannot build on marshy land. You cannot. It is not strategic either in governance or in developmental or leadership aspects. That worldview doesn't hold. Okay, whether this rotating powers to the north and so on, it will not happen because Biya came to power by force. It's a trick. Ayujo was tricked and he fell into the trap, and Biya took advantage. And a coup d'etat took place, he was successful. So there is nothing like smooth transition, rotating power. What is needed? Cameroon has been captured. The whole system has been captured. It is not a matter of people, it is a matter of genuine institutions. And therefore, to have those genuine institutions in place, there should be some sort of mass mobilization towards reclamation of Cameroon. The institution must be reclaimed. The governance structures must be reclaimed. The judiciary must be reclaimed. And it falls squarely in the hands of all Cameroonians. You can talk about election today. We know the results. The list, we already knew about the list before Saturday. We know the election result. So it's foolhardy to actually see Cameroonian jumping that Kamto will perform some miracles. Let me go back again from flashpoints. Let's flash back. We are having more than one university in Cameroon. It wasn't through election. It was through mass mobilization towards reclamation of the rights to education and access to education and participation. And people fought against the system in Yaoundé, and Boya University came and other universities came. It was not through election. We are having multi-partyism today. Though there is no democracy in Cameroon, there is because democracy without opposition, democracy with strong men is not democracy. It can never be progressive. That did not come because of election through the ballot. People galvanized, women, men, children, Southern Cameroonians and Cameroonians, when we trusted each other. move toward the direction of multipartyism, and it happened. Now, this is another stage. You need to reclaim your country. You need to reclaim the structures. You need to reclaim whatever electoral system you want to put in place, the judiciary. You need to reclaim the media. You need to reclaim a lot of institutions and start building from there before moving towards election. That is when you will have genuine election, when the institutions are in place. That is when the people will respect rights, individual rights, and institutional rights. That is when people are encouraged and motivated. We cannot be talking about voter apathy when people don't trust the system. They simply are against the system. It's not voter apathy. They don't trust the thing. There is nothing that works. So, summarily, Cameroonians need to stand up and bring a mass mobilization towards reclaiming Cameroon for the betterment of all Cameroonians.
Thank you. Kingsley, back to you. The question that we had planned to look at today was the impact of Biya'S candidacy, but now with the 13 candidates, I'm going to just expand that. What would this do in the war in southern Cameroon, regardless whosoever is going to emerge as the leader of that country? There are strong voices within the southern Cameroon presently calling for complete boycott of the elections. There are people who are saying that we need to think or disentangle ourselves from the emotions and think rationally, even if they don't support the election, but the people who want to do it should do it. What exactly is this? How is this going to play? The argument that for 8 years now, neither Biya nor his wife has not visited either of those two regions. Neither Maurice Kamtos has not visited that region, even if he was running. Kare has not done so. Kare, I think, confirmed that he had not even gone to his own village. Chiruma, who completely tried to dismiss the idea of a federation, is now talking about a federation. I think 2 or 3 days ago, Buba Bello Maigari also was talking about a federated country. How is this going to play out to the people of Southern Cameroon, Kingsley?
Yeah, thank you once more. I think the first thing we have to look at is what you talked about, total boycott. And it will come to fit into exactly what I was saying about Camto. In 2018, there were calls for boycott from the EGOPC to the IG, and what it ended up doing was that it took away the little leverage that we even have and gave it to Bia. In 2020, the SDF was completely decimated. That was what we could say it was some sort of, to use your term, I see you refer to them as the Northwest and Southwest, but to say that was a southern Cameroon's party. But then by boycotting and using fear and intimidation, saying don't go and attacking people. I saw images of people with fire on their genitals just to stop them from going to the elections. Who came out victorious? Paul Biya. Paul Biya controls every single council in the southern Cameroons. He controls all the parliament, the constituencies. So effectively, boycott is giving power to the very oppressor we want to fight. It's a failed approach to fight a dictatorship like Biya'S. He likes boycotts. He likes the war. He likes violence because guess what? When you say boycott, he's actually going to instigate boycott because he will get 100% if there is a boycott, but he will get 0% if there is no boycott. That said, looking at the candidates you've just pointed out about Maurice Kamto, he's never visited. So as an Anglophone, I would never really support Kamto. I supported Kamto in 2018. I was on the streets here supporting him after he claimed to have won. I was supporting and I followed his plan. He advocated for support for the Aya Foundation, which we, with Charles Mambo and others here in the UK, we get a 40-foot container in Kamtos' name. We did all those things, but then Kamtos had not had the decency to go even to Victoria or to go to Boya when there is mountain race, when there is security. When John Funzi died, that was his opportunity. He did not go to the Northwest. He could have gone under that security to at least even see. He did not. So for me, I don't trust that he has the mind to solve it. Do I trust Issa Chiruma? No. Akerimuna, now I have a reason why I would say Akerimuna. One, because he's an Anglophone. Secondly, because his father was the victim of that coup d'etat that the last speaker talked about. He was the last vice president of Cameroon when the machinery was being put in place to bring Biya in. And an Anglophone who could have been president of Cameroon legally was removed, and there was never the position of vice president was scrapped so that Biya could be the prime minister and become the president. So I feel that instead of blaming the Munas, we should actually say his dad was deprived of something that would have avoided the crisis that we have today.
Okay.
Maybe he should, with his plan also of transitional president, he should be given a chance. But I also would go for Joshua Osi because I've listened to his plan. He's got a very strong plan. He has a plan. His plan is centered on resolving the crisis. He has been to many places in the Anglophone region. I give him credit for that. So it would come to back any of these candidates if his candidacy is not supported. I don't know. But if he does, and then we create a mass movement and we have evidence like Venezuela had, that is a starting point. But one last point to make is that let us not lose sight of the fact that this regime is built around a person rather than actually in an institution. It's entrenched on the person of Biya.
True.
It is entrenched around the personality of Biya. Take away Biya, the whole system collapses. And
That,
let us not forget that nature will take its course. I am not looking at just 2025. I am looking at in the next few years, do we have the mechanisms in place to ensure that Gongo does not replace Biya in that system that they've created?
I
We have
think
the mechanism in place that to
Kingsley.
ensure that Atanganji, because we keep talking of an Anglophone, but Atanganji could be put in to replace Biya, and that is the man that is stupid enough to actually take Biya's image and continue to rule with it.
Thank you, Kingsley. I think you chuckle me a little bit to even think that even at this moment, Gongo is not the shadow president of Cameroon. Gongo is already the shadow president. But Sese we need to come back to you with the same question that I posed to Kingsley. Don't you think it is a little bit looking for convenience to now hold the Southern Cameroons or the Ambazonians responsible for not participating in the election in 2018 for calling for boycott? Before 2018, without the presence of Ambazonians or Southern Cameroonians or even the war, there have been elections in that country. And we had the same outcome. There were no wars. Neither Biya did not even go to those areas to campaign. And then if we're going to hold Kamto to a higher standard that he has not visited, Kare has not visited the region either. So we have to be fair when we're engaging with this in this kind of a conversation. No. What do you really think?
Let me first thank Dr. Patrick Ayok for the last comments he made. We are not here because we trust anything electoral in that country. That's not what we're here. We are here, all of us are Southern Cameroonians who have been talking here, Southern Cameroonians, Ambazonian, Anglophone, whatever you want to call us. We embrace all of that. We are here because we want to educate our population too, to know that with all that we have lost, with all that we have suffered, our people have suffered, these 7 going 8 years of significant violence in our territory, we have every duty not only to be in despair and be shooting guns, but there are multifaceted areas for us to look into to try to meet up with our aspirations or to ease the pain on our people. And we would not allow our people to be seen as the reason why Cameroon still goes on. The Cameroon still goes on to have a 93-year-old man to be president for another for whatever year.
7 years, another mandate.
Another 70, whatever year. Say he'll be about 100 and something before he will not be president. So I agree. I'm listening to Kingsley and to Patrick. They're making valid points. We don't have any trust. We are not sitting here because we are clapping hands for elections in Cameroon. Patrick said it very correctly. We did not have any guns in our hands when we made significant achievements. Like he said, the universities. There was only one university in Cameroon when our people started mobilizing. First for the Anglo-Saxon University in Boya. The system has sworn through communal liberalism, book written by Paul Biya and his philosophy, that there will never be multi-party in Cameroon. The people rallied, and that they wanted multi-party, and there was multi-party. And Bella Mbappe has sworn with government and Biya that there would not be a GCE board when they started messing up with our children's education. We were together, and they had no choice. The Cameroon system is weak, like Kingsley said, but they do everything to provoke violence. They fear genuine rallying and unity of the populace, which is what Frondi brought, which is what the Anglophone or Southern Cameroonians brought in the 90s, that got the universities and the GCE board. They would like this war to go on. They like excuses. They would use it as violence. They will call the genuine, if there are any genuine freedom fighters with guns, they will call them terrorists. And maybe, who knows, they might succeed one day if they continue to get the international community to label us terrorists. So what I would say is that let us be strategic going forward. Not everybody who is not an Amazonian is our enemy. Even the enemy sometimes too in some situation can be a partner for us to achieve certain things. If Biya continues and people like Atanganji are there, we don't know what would happen in our territory. We would have had a little hope that if there was a very mass movement to push Biya out and the CPDM, there might be someone who would come and withdraw and stop the violence. But right now, the way things are looking, we cannot put our finger on anything. And about the Anglophone candidate too, who doesn't want? We all want to have our brother to be the president over there. I mean, we have every right. It's not a favor. It's our right. That has been taken away from us. But Kare would have to do the work. He would have to show up like that Anglophone candidate of the moment. So let us think broadly. Maybe if this thing continues, why not? Someday we would sponsor parliamentarians who are there only for the Anglophone cause or for the Amazonian cause.
Well, but if you say so, somebody like Wiba who was there and tried to, first of all, did the whole rebirth of the Anglophones or English Cameroonians renaissance, this new rebirth in the spirit of really getting people to wake up to the injustices that have been carried upon the people in the two English-speaking regions. So, Kenneth, let me come back to you. I know your argument seems to imply that with an Anglophone candidate, then the root cause of this crisis would be addressed. But I don't think the root cause of this crisis had been because of the lack of an Anglophone candidate. Uh, that is a symptom of the root cause of the problem, that some of these things were not addressed. So why would you now want to convince the people that in case we have an Anglophone candidate who is promising to be there just for 5 years or to do a transition, would that be enough to heal the damage that has been done in that country?
Well, it's not going to be enough. I mean, at a very minimum, it will be a silver lining, okay, in the cloud. Cameroon has two law systems. The French system, whether I forget what they call those things, I'm not a lawyer, but Cameroon has the French system and then the English system. And unfortunately, what we are seeing happening in Cameroon now, they even nominated, they call those guys what, bailiffs, auditors or something like that. And from what I'm made to understand, it just goes completely against what gives in English law, okay? And the whole Southern Cameroon's crisis in its present form started with the OHADA translation of OHADA. OHADA did not even pass through parliament. Where in...
You mean the face, the new face? Because the new face.
Yes.
That is a new face because it did not start from that.
Okay, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, I mean, Professor Bernard Fonlon had been writing letters to Amadou Ahidjo since 1961. But anyway, in its current form, you had the OHADA and crisis and so on. So just like Dr. Patrick Ayuk was saying a few moments ago, we have to reclaim our land. If you have an Anglophone as president, especially now, to usher Cameroon in a third republic, I mean, Amadou Ahidjo, and if you look critically, why did France look for Amadou Ahidjo to bring into this system? You see, these are some facts that most of us do not quite know or realize. Amadou Ahidjo, Jean-Paul Ramadier, Pierre Mesmer, and Louis-Paul Ojula, they were looking for somebody to fight against André Marimbida. They approached Aruna Njoya, who was Amadou Ahidjo, Aruna Njoya was an MP who was taking Amadou Ahidjo and helping him translate in the north. They approached and Aruna Njoya refused to be the French lackey. And there was somebody else. But when they asked the Lamido of Rebuba, he recommended Amadou Ahidjo. Long story short, we have Amadou Ahidjo. There is no reason, most Nordists don't know this, there is no reason why Northerners are thinking somehow it is their birthright or they send the pendulum down south, now they should send it back up. It doesn't make sense.
Patrick.
It doesn't make Brado, just so I don't lose my train of thought, please.
Please do
we
it,
have
Patrick.
13 candidates, okay?
For
now, yes. Let, Bello Buba Maigari, the Yerima of the North, as they call him. Bello Buba is not in very healthy condition. Issa Chiroma has his own voting bloc as well. These guys, let them help us as in an Anglophone candidate. Let them bring their voting bloc, and then you, Mr. Maurice Kamtos, Kare Muna supported Maurice Kamtos in 2018, threw in the towel and went with him. Why? Kare Muna is a good consensus candidate. What is really wrong in that? Okay, you, Maurice Kamtos, why don't you do what happened in Senegal and support an Kare Muna?
Well, you cannot rule that out, Kenneth. For now, it will require the political candidates to it will require the political candidates to engage in substantive conversation on how to proceed. So we cannot rule out whatever might happen moving forward.
Can I just want to ask Kenneth. Kenneth, since
I'll come over to you.
Since you are posing as a Kare's supporter, which I don't think, I don't know whether you're campaign manager or your supporter, whichever title you have, but is Kare as we speak today? Because I'd written to Kare and we have communicated a little bit, and we are on the same forum that we chat, but he's always quiet there. Is he willing? Why is Kare willing right now to start singing the immediate unconditional release of Seseko Ayuk Tabe and all our Ambazonian leaders, political prisoners in all the prisons across the nation, Kondingi and all over? That's a very little token of something that he can really put on his platform, right?
You see, what many people don't even know is that the Muna and Muna Law Chambers has been fighting for a lot of people across the board. Southern Cameroonians who are in jail, and people don't even know that. Those are
They are
raw facts.
francophone lawyers to that fight for them. So
Those are raw facts.
that's a
So
job.
we cannot.
I'm talking on the political
again,
campaign. I'm talking
I
on the
mean, I don't know
political
whether that's a
campaign.
precondition for him to
Patrick.
be on the
No,
ballot.
no.
Patrick.
Just for him to
Patrick.
Yes.
the good faith.
Absolutely.
Patrick,
Absolutely.
if
Yes.
I get what Kingsley, Seseko Bini, and Kenneth are saying, it is not enough for us to say Southern Cameroonians should not participate in an election that is already foregone. What is the alternative? Is there a possibility that maybe a different candidate can come in and act on Seseko Bini's appeal that the leadership of the Southern Cameroon, that is Seseko Ayoktabe and the other prisoners of conscience, would be released if we maintain the same entrenched system? Would BIA indicating in 2019 that they attempted to assimilate and integrate the two English speaking regions, but because of cultural differences, it was difficult? Would this give them a chance to complete what they have failed to do for the past 60 years, Dr. Patrick?
You know, this election, what is happening in Cameroon, has actually vindicated the Southern Cameroonians, the Ambazonians, who decided to stand for their right to self-determination, who decided to fight exclusion and brutal humiliation, who decided to fight for what we call, or sometimes call, cultural genocide in terms of their education, their identity, in terms of their religions or their legal system. That was a cultural genocide. That was brutal. The regime was aimed at extincting Southern Cameroonians. And they have stood firm. Again, the elections can never be a negotiation chip for the release of prisoners of conscience. Whether it's whoever, Bia or whoever stands and wins the election, it can never be a negotiation chip. It can never be a bargaining chip. They have to do what is morally right to release Sisiku Ayoktabe and the rest of the prisoners. Not only Bia, we're not relying on Bia, we're not relying on anybody. We're relying on conscience, we're relying on the rights of people. We're relying on humanity, people who think they can do the right thing and release those people that are suffering in jail. Okay, when we look at it further, Bia's candidature is actually an advantage to Southern Cameroons. It's an advantage to Ambazonians because it has actually exposed the brutality of the system, the wickedness of the regime. And if you look at Bia, there is no way that you can disentangle or you separate Bia from the rest of the people that are running for the election. Call it Kamto, call it Akaremuna, and so on. They are all members of the same system of different levels. That is why none of them have gone to Cameroon to talk to the people, to console them, to do things that can make people to feel that, okay, these people feel about our suffering. They sympathize with us. They're doing something. They are part of it. Okay. Now, when we look at the elections, what is happening is what strategists, real developmental practitioners envisage that it will happen. Bia will run, and to the disadvantage of Cameroon. The level of military approach, high-handedness, that Bia used on the people of Southern Cameroon, It's happening in Cameroon, in Yaoundé. The people are seeing it in Douala and so on. Kanto being put under house arrest, elections list being manipulated, Atanganji giving people. That is just a bird's eye view of what happened in Southern Cameroon. And this had been happening. So election is not. So second, the final thing I want to say, we cannot legitimize an oppressor. Anything that stands for an oppressive system must be fought against in a very civilized way.
But
People
Dr.
have the
Ayok,
right to protest
Dr.
against election.
Dr. Ayok, that has not answered the question. Given our present dispensation, what do we do now? Is it just to say, forget the elections, and they have a moral duty or responsibility to release the people that they are holding? As to maybe, can we consider other alternatives? Is there somebody that can come in and act otherwise? Because just saying that throw the baby and the water away, I don't think that it cuts it. I understand the strong argument that you are making, which even if you draw that into the people who are in the system, like the prime minister that we have in there, is completely without any portfolio, and
Yes.
probably
So
might think
that's
that the
what I'm
president might
saying
come
is
in there and then change
what I'm
things.
saying is it is left for Cameroonians have come of age to control the narratives, to fight for the release of their leaders. Cameroonians, no matter the status, whether you have been voted or elected as the president of Cameroon, whether Biya wins and Biya will win, he has the moral authority, obligation to release them. If somebody comes in, he has that moral authority. The election cannot be a bargaining chip for the release of our leader. They know that, but we'll keep on reminding them. Let them do what is morally correct to release them. Now, the
All right.
advantage, while they are not releasing them, they are actually improving the way Southern Cameroonians are approaching it. The diaspora is fighting out. The international organizations are seeing Biya and the system Cameroon as a problem. Elections will be unfair, and they have often unfair in Cameroon. So when
Kingsley,
the international pressure will be mounting, and they will be pressure that their system cannot correct this problem. Let's bring
Kingsley,
an international external mediator to solve this problem because you cannot solve the problem. We've
thank you,
relied
Dr.
on
Ayok.
Biya for many years. It has not happened. You cannot rely on any other person because Biya will win.
Thank you, Dr. Ayok. Kingsley, let me bring you back. It's hard to dismiss Dr. Ayok's argument based on what has actually happened in that country for the past 62 or 63 years since independence. It's hard to convince some of these people from the two English-speaking regions that participating in these elections is going to change their lot from what they are presently going through. If you've been following what has been happening on social media a couple of days or weeks ago, you saw the inauguration of the Kribi refinery. We know since 2019 when Sonara came down, they said they were going to do rehabilitation of Sonara. That has not happened. If you look at the Limbe Deep Seaport, that has not happened. The Bamenda Ring Road, that has not happened. I think if you look at what is coming from that region as far as the GDP is concerned, I think some estimates put it between 45 and 60%. But what goes back into this region is completely insignificant. And then after 8 years of this crisis, the situation has really gone down the drain. The economic situation in that country has completely been stifled. Cocoa, if you go across Nigeria, is about 4 or 5 thousand a kilogram. If you're coming to Kumba, they're trying for you to sell it at $2,500. So explain to these people that yes, in as much as your vote is insignificant, I don't think there are close to 2 million people registered in the two English speaking region. This is going to be impactful. Kingsley.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I don't think there's anyone who would disagree that we have been dealt a very unfortunate hand as Anglophone Cameroonians. However, what we often fail to see is that we are just part of a broader chess game that started in 1945 and evolved in 1956 when France made sure that by the time that Cameroon was independent, it was getting independence through one door and being recolonized through another. The sad reality is that Southern Cameroon voted to join a territory that was not independent. So when they say we became independent through joining, we actually left one colonial master to another. We just became a colony of France by proxy because Cameroon was never independent from France. And that is something that we completely ignore in all this because fundamentally all the things that we see, symptoms that we see in Southern Cameroon are across the whole territory. Go to the north and you weep. You weep. When they say they win in the north, it's not because the people vote out of knowledge, it's because of the lack of education. Southern Cameroonians, we are talking about a bad education system. In the north, it's non-existent. So we have a system that operates on working on destruction rather than on construction, and to expect anything from that system is wrong. Don't get me wrong about that. Biya'S has reduced everything that he met to a rubble. I grew up in Dubs. We had UMBDA. UMBDA could produce rice that could deal with climate change. Today, it's a shadow of itself. It's not the conflict that made it so. It became that way from a long period of time. So Biya'S has always been that way. It's a product of France. And if we are not careful, and that's why I struggle with when people think that just splitting the two and getting independence solves the problem. No, if we do not go back to the roots, and when I say the roots, it's basically looking at why is France in the mix? Why is a colonial master continuously in the mix? It's not the language. Yes. It's not the language. Because we miss some people mistake to think that it's French speaking versus English speaking. It's not. That system that France brought is deep inside it's entangled into the two. And that's why you see they keep manipulating even the conflict that we've had. But let me not go too deep into all of that. What I feel we need to start looking at is being strategic. And one of the members in the studio really said that. And I don't disagree with anyone who says they want independence. But I say, do not fall into Biya'S trap of thinking that you use violence to solve it, because he knows violence. And when you say, I am going to give guns, he arms a faction that is stronger than you. If you say that you want to use violence, you want to kidnap, you want to do this, he does it better than you. He operates in violence. It's the same like say you want to meet a man and talk and speak Bayan more than them. You cannot. You cannot speak violence more than Biya'S. So we have to be able to sit back and say, how can we get out of this system where we continue to lose out day in, day out? In the last 8 years, the little we had is gone. Our people are dying. Our institutions are being brought to the ground, but it continues to entrench this man in power. How do we step away from that a bit and look at it differently? And that is why I was one of the first people who called for a protest in the UK here in 2016. But I stepped away and I realized that it was only working to their advantage. And I'm looking at how do I walk through different approaches to be able to get someone who can, the very least, Dr. Ayogi is talking about conscience. He doesn't have a conscience. If he had a conscience, he will not give Mancho BBC a 15-year sentence. He will not give Ayub Tabe a life sentence. For what? If he had a conscience, people will not be dying. If he had a conscience, he wouldn't be running for elections at 92. So let's not expect to get water from stone. Now, when I talked about Gongo, it is because the CPDM has built a system that Biya'S is the flag bearer, and unfortunately, they don't have an escape route for Biya'S to come out because it's so built around him. Even the uniforms have his emblem, so they cannot remove Biya'S stand. So what they've done is continue to prop up his image so that they can continue to pillage around. And that's why you see them so desperate. Ask yourself, who will give a Tanganji a ministerial position if not someone as daft as Bia or as senile as Bia? Atanganji has no qualification to be minister, so he will do anything to keep that system going so he can continue to be a minister.
Yeah,
It's self-interest. It's self-interest that keeps these guys there. And what we need to think is, how do we get these monsters around that system out by any means necessary? And the first step is that we need to be able to get mass mobilization. One way to get people mobilized, legitimately get people mobilized, is to ask them to actually register to vote. When someone votes and is stolen, they have lost something. But when someone doesn't vote, they have lost nothing.
Kingsley, let me come.
Senegal that we
Hold on,
quoted, just
Kingsley.
one last point. Senegal that we quoted, the only
Kingsley.
reason Senegal could stand up that way is because when you look at the percentage of Senegalese who are registered and who actually vote, it is more than 50%, and then it's far more compared to Cameroon, that is just about 3 to 4% of the 10%, sorry, of the whole population.
Kingsley, to hold you back to
Yeah.
that, when you say every means necessary, does that mean that everything is on the table, including military force? Because that's what got the Ambazonians or the Southern Cameroonians in the first place to get to a point where they said every means necessary. Can you follow up on that thought?
Yeah,
Yeah, and
just to clarify, when I say I've already
yeah,
discounted violence because it doesn't work in our advantage. It requires us to
yes,
rely on
yes, yeah.
external forces, on foreign-made weapons, on things, and it can easily be manipulated. It is currently being manipulated.
Okay.
So
Well,
violence is
yeah, yeah.
manipulated to an
Well,
extent that we cannot get mass mobilization to be manipulated.
Okay,
I,
that makes
I,
sense.
I was I was I was just thinking when Dr. Ayuk talked about conscience, I don't think he was talking about Biya'S conscience. He was talking about the
Moral
people.
authority. I'm talking about
If
moral authority.
the Francophone Cameroonians had conscience and the courage to stand up against their own system, there would have not been these 7 years quiet and calm and see Biya use the military to slaughter innocent Anglophone citizens. So that's the conscience they are talking about. Part of the conscience that I think Dr. Ayok is talking about is the conscience of the candidates now. When I talked on getting the candidates to talk about immediate and unconditional release of Seseko Ayoktabe and our citizens that they are holding up in their dungeons, it's not because I think the candidates have any power, but by them talking, they add a voice. By them talking, they add additional pressure on the system that they might want to do something before even the elections. That's why, even with my son and my friend Kenneth here, who is so much high there with the candidate, I want him to commit now that he's going to pressure his candidate to sing about the release of these political prisoners. And when we talk about strategy, Dr. Patrick talked and Kingsley also talked about our successes without guns in the 90s. Great successes, monumental. The GC board, the multi-party, the universities, there were no guns. And most of the people who were rallying the citizens for these demonstrations and this revolution were civil servants who were being paid by the government. So if we must be strategic, the war that Biya has declared on us, as painful as it is physically in the slaughtering of our citizens and the displacement of many and the lockup of many, the guns in our hands too have not played very much to our favors because the system is very, very smart. They have given guns to our own citizens, Ambazonian citizens who sing Ambazonia, but turn those guns against us. So we must be very strategic even in the military side or the self-defense side.
Thank you.
Let us understand that this thing can go on forever, and begin to understand how we can manage the violence and give full life to our citizens. We cannot continue in closing down schools and expect that we will have favors for our revolution. We cannot continue telling our people who must go to work to earn a living to raise a family that they cannot work. You cannot tell a teacher who earns money by right. It's not a favor that the government is paying them for teaching students. That's a duty of the government. So we cannot stop all those things. So as this thing is going on now, these people are going into their elections. The implication is that we should draw back to and be strategic and know how we can manage and correct some of the errors that we have made ourselves, so that we can regain the trust of our people, remobilize ourselves, solidify our unity, and make our people have a life. Because this disruption is a new normal. And if we are not careful, that new normal would exist, but it will not play to our favor.
All right, Mr. Kevin, thank you. Gentlemen, I am going to, we've out of time, so I'm going to give each of you 1 to 2 minutes for your final thoughts. I understand that most of the time we become so emotional trying to unpack the complex political realities in Cameroon. But a lot of these brilliant ideas and suggestions are just going to be that if we do not really have concrete actions like Kingsley is saying on the ground. How do we mobilize people? There's a lot of apathy not only on the ground, even here in the diaspora. You go to, today is a Saturday, there are hundreds of conventions in the Cameroonian diaspora, both in Europe and here in the US, people eating and dancing, throwing farotes and all of that when the country is at the brink of implosion. We are at an inflection point that care is not taken. The entire place is going to go up in flames. I understand that a lot of us in the southern Cameroon struggle would say, okay, damn it, let it go up in flames. So Kenneth, your final thoughts, please be.
I would
don't
try
go
to
back
be
to
brief. No,
Azula
I'm not going.
and
Yes, I would. Okay, I want to focus on two things, and this is the registration of voters and then the actually Biya'S candidacy. I think Kingsley has explained it best during this session, whereby he talked about boycotting the vote is not an option. You play right into the dragnet of the Biya elections, elecam, what have you. Okay? If you are confident enough, whether you're in the southern Cameroon or you're in the Republic of Cameroon, and you know you're confident enough that your numbers vastly outweigh the numbers of the regime, simply go and vote and let those numbers outweigh the regime. So boycotting is just not an option. I've said it on here many times. The Southern Cameroons who in 2018 said there's no vote in Southern Cameroons, they're trying to replay that script. It does not work. It doesn't work. UPC in East Cameroon has been boycotting elections since 1948. It doesn't work. Let me move resolutely to Biya'S candidacy. If you go to Cote d'Ivoire today, it's very difficult to identify anybody who is a Houphouët Boigny. It's very difficult in Cote d'Ivoire. Okay? What Paul Biya is doing, together with, let's just say Chantal Biya and their appendage, Ferdinand Gongo, is that they are moving slowly towards, let's say, at a minimum, because if things continue in a certain way, when Biya dies and he is near his deathbed, and he is gone, the name Biya will be taboo. Who can effectively bear that name Biya and go anywhere in Cameroon? Whereas if these people's consciences were to judge them and they leave power gracefully and exit the stage honorably, in 10 years' time or 20 years, we will even lovely want another Biya there.
Thank you, Kenneth, for that concluding thought. Unfortunately, Aijo did that, and his lot has not been quite different. So sometimes this analysis, you look back in the rearview mirror and say, "Wait, have we not just been there?" Is this Kubini?
Well, like I said earlier, I feel for the candidates, I feel for the nation, I feel for our suffering people of southern Cameroon and Amazonia. I would tell our people on the ground to just let October come and pass. I hear people getting up to try to disrupt the elections. Don't bother yourself. Let the blame not be that Cameroon did not change because we call for electoral boycott. We are sitting here, most of us here, Dr. Patrick Ayuk, Kingsley, myself, Kenneth, and Brado Tabanyang. We are one of the most radical southern Cameroonians and Amazonians, but you can see that we are reasonable. We are not, our radicalism does not go into promoting enmity, violence, and all those other things. It goes into building too. We have the capability, if we had our will, to educate our people to listen, even in what is good in the army. But when our revolution got to a certain stage, it got off our hands. And I can tell you that most of the disruptions in our ranks were created by the enemy we were trying to run away from. So I would appeal to our people, respect other people's rights during this electoral process. If you don't want to vote, stay home. Don't go and disrupt other people not to exercise their rights to go and vote. Let them vote, and let's wait and see the outcome in post-October. I'll be waiting to hear from my friend Kingsley, the app that he has created. If it has any value, all of us would rally and promote it. Right? He says he has an app. And I'm here, I'll not let Kenneth go. I want to wake up in the morning and hear his candidate singing, release, immediate unconditional release of Seseko Ayuktabe and all the Ambazonian political prisoners. And again, Kingsley, was nice seeing you. Again, I saw you with Mimi Mofo. And Dr. Ayuk, it's always nice being on a panel with you. So let's keep doing our own little bit that we can do. And thank you, Tabenyang, for always having us. And don't think that you're having us too much. When you look at CNN, it's the same people who are always on the panel every night. You don't need to be looking.
No, you don't. People. That's very true.
Yes.
Kingsley, over to you. Thank you, Sesu Webini.
Yeah, thank you, Sisiko, Tabinyang, and Kenneth and Dr. Ayu for this opportunity. It was great having this discussion. I would just have two things to say. One is to re-emphasize the appeal that has just been made by Sisiko that please let's not appear to be what's the word? To be trying to stop something which ends up not giving us anything. If anything, going in for the elections and pushing is another form of resistance. It shows we are fighting against the system that declared the war on us. Fighting every single vote against Biya'S is a revolutionary vote. So if you want to really stop the war, then actually go out and vote any other candidate other than Bia. Of course, don't vote for someone that you think is going to continue the system. But we've got three Anglophones there. Vote for one of them. That is a revolutionary vote. Because you are basically telling the system, I do not accept your legitimacy, and you use their own system to tell them that. That is my first appeal. Just to say that support the idea of release of unconditional release of prisoners. It's very important because it's not just Sisiko Ayuk and the Nera 10 and a few others in Kondenge. We have hundreds of thousands of people arrested in line of this crisis who have committed no crime whatsoever, who are languishing in jail. We need to hear the candidates committing that one of their first acts in office would be to release massive, decongest the prison, release the Anglophones who are being held in those prisons. Credit to Joshua LOC. I listened to his interview, and he committed that he was going to do that. With Asisiku and all the others, he at least committed that, and we hope to hear that from all the other candidates going forward. Now, the final thing I would say is the app, just so that I can give it a bit more context and use this opportunity to explain. So it is part of this movement that I co-founded with Michelle Ndoki because as an Anglophone who had been on the street, who had shouted, who have, I mean, I don't know if you guys remember, I interviewed Sisiko, sorry, Sako, Chris Arnold, Ayabacho, trying to find common ground with all of this, with Mark Barretta. I tried, and I discovered that for some reason, there was a bigger force helping us to bird heads, and we're not moving anywhere. And I decided to start building bridges with the same people across. So it's not just, it's me, it's there's Dr. Maria Ayuk, who is from Manu. She works in Germany. There's Michelle Doki, of course, who is from this Littoral. There is Natalie, who is from the West region, and there's Joseph Esama, who is from the Central region. So I thought that working together to come up with something that can counter this machinery and not always be reactionary to it was the way to go. And what inspired that was the fact that when Kamto claimed to have won in 2018, we had no evidence. And so, even though I went out to say, oh, Kamto won, I had no evidence to back out that Kamto won. And so, I couldn't convince someone else to join me in saying Kamto won. I only believe that I was saying that as a reaction to the fact that I didn't like the regime in place that had declared war against my people. But did I have evidence to actually convince two, three more people to join me? I didn't.
Thank you,
We
please.
are trying to create that evidence.
Thank
And
you.
that is what I am advocating for. And this app, like I said, is not an app that people need to download on their phones because they can block it. So
Casey.
what we've done is we've created a server which holds this system, and how it operates is that the people that we recruit that are going to be volunteers, we are going to be able to configure them onto that system, so only them can send information to the app. Now, if we have up to 3 per station, they can actually send text information and it will still come in. And so what we want to do is that by the end of 12th of October, we can show people exactly what the results are. And before whatever election is doing, if Cameroon has to
Casey.
burn, let it
Casey,
burn
thank you.
legitimately.
Thank you, thank you. And I think there is a website, the Nation Builders,
Yes.
Le Bâtisseur de la Nation, the French version. So if you go to lebâtisseur-cm.com, you would find that website, and there's a lot of information on it. Dr. Ayok, your thoughts, final thoughts, please. Please be brief.
Thank you, Kingsley. Thank you, Cisco Dr. Bini. Thank you, Kenneth. And thank you, Brado. Thank you to Media 2 Africa for offering us the platform. The discussions have been very insightful and very educative. So thank you so much. I think my final conclusion or idea is that, you know, in every democracy where individual rights and liberty are respected, civil disobedience is cherished and encouraged and supported. So, but when you have a strong system wherein civil disobedience becomes violence, what has happened in southern Cameroon has been mostly civil disobedience. Civil disobedience in terms of lockdowns, civil disobedience, teachers and lawyers coming out, civil disobedience in different formations, civil disobedience of no 11 February or 20th May in Southern Cameroon, and civil disobedience in terms of we not voting for elections, people having their rights. That is individual rights. They have their rights not to vote or to vote, to participate. Again, we shouldn't be caught up in this game of false equivalence. I will always say false equivalence in the sense that you cannot compare what happened in Senegal with what happened in Cameroon or what happened in Cote d'Ivoire. You know, Cameroon is very toxic. It's a decomposing system. It's not a dying system, it's a decomposing system. So comparing Senegalese coming out, they already have the institutions, they have the structure, they have the mechanism for accountability. So again, when you have come out with this system of checking the vote, who voted, and so on, when you get all this data, my brother Kingsley, what next? What happened? What is the enforceability? How sustainable is that? What is the final outcome? The institutions are not there. Cameroon is a democracy without opposition. It's a strong state. Therefore, my final conclusion is that let's go back to basic before we start blaming Amazonians or Southern Cameroonians. Cameroon can still, somebody can still defeat Biya in an election if you have the right institution in place in just Cameroon. Not forget that Southern Cameroon makes only 20% of the population of Cameroon. So in just Cameroon, in simple Cameroon, if you carry out election with the right system, the right mechanism, without Southern Cameroonians participating, Biya can be defeated. It's okay. That false equivalence in Senegal, there is those system in place. There are those systems in place. So that's why I said we shouldn't move into false equivalence. We shouldn't be distracted by that. Finally, the only way
You
that
said
Cameroonians
conclusion,
can
doctor.
succeed is to ensure that they build a system in place. Come out, reclaim the state that has been captured. When you reclaim the state, put the right institutions in place where there is transparency, there is accountability, there is access, and there is participation. When these are in place, election will take place very well, and the right person will be in charge, and that person, Cameroon will flourish. Thank you.
On that note, gentlemen, I want to again thank all of you for the wonderful contributions. We pray that we should not end up with the situation in Venezuela when we do everything right, and then you have the incumbents sitting tight. The global community will always come in the first couple of weeks, and they would have all of this condemnation, and election was not clear, it was not fair, it was a rigged election, there was intimidation. After 4 weeks, and everything gets back to normal. It's all about the interest. So once again, thank you, but we have to engage in these robust conversations. We should not be afraid to, no matter our disagreements, we must not be afraid to talk about these things that affect the lives of people in our communities. Lati, are you ready for me? Okay, but before I finish the program for today, I want to wish my beloved wife, Miss Prudence Tabenyang, happy birthday. She celebrated her birthday yesterday, but since I'm in studio today, I would love to send you more love, more happiness, and maybe we'll look forward to new additions. Thank you.
Is she in
Happy
Colorado?
birthday,
Happy
President.
birthday. Is she in
Happy
Colorado?
birthday.
She's in Colorado. Thank you.
Happy
Thank you.
birthday
Thank
to
you.
you.
Lati, can you put
Happy
the video down?
birthday to you. Happy birthday, Mrs. Tabe. Happy birthday to you.
Cha cha cha.
Yeah.
That was a nice touch.
Thank you, guys. Kingsley, we'll touch base. Thank you so much.
Okay,
Okay,
Kingsley,
thank
take
you.
care, man.
Thank you,
Thank
Good
you.
luck
thank
with
you,
the
doctor.
app.
Yeah, thank you, Kingsley. Thank you. We'll
Yeah,
touch base.
thank you.